To the April 2023 committee meetings of Dubbo Regional Council. I advise that Council is now web streaming its standing committees and council meetings live to the internet, and as such, all those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Your attendance at this meeting is your acceptance of the condition that your image may be recorded and streamed to the internet, as well as being retained in the archive of the recorded council meetings and the standing committee meetings. I now open the April 2023 Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee meeting, the time being 5:30 p.m. Acknowledgement of country. Councillor Burns, please.
Acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I also like to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging of the Wiradjuri nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people from other nations who are present.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. The next item on the agenda is item IPEC 23/8, leave of absence. There being no councillors absent, then we'll move on. As per clause 3.20 of the Code of Meeting Practice, subject to clause 3.21, the Chief Executive Officer may put to the meeting in writing without notice any matter or topic which is within the jurisdiction of the Council, or of which the Council has official knowledge that requires a decision by the Council before the next scheduled ordinary meeting of the Council. Item IPEC 23/12 is now added to the meeting and will be dealt with in a confidential session later. The next item is IPEC 23/9, conflicts of interest. Do any councillors have any conflicts of interest to declare? Councillor Goff, later. Thank you. No one else. We'll move on to the next item, IPEC 23/10, building summary for March 2023. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Director, Development and Environment? Moved Councillor Ivey, seconded Councillor Chowdhury. Thank you. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to that motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The figures are actually quite pleasing, and they continue a trend that's been evident for a while. I noticed where the value of the DA approvals for the year to date up to the end of March is about 16% up on the same time last year, which is obviously quite pleasing.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Great observation. Any other questions or comments, councillors? Councillor Wright.
Just a further comment, also probably supporting those ones of Councillor Ivey, that I see that for the 2023 year to date for March, 684 DA or development types approved, and for the same period in 2022, 670. So we're slightly up on last year with those numbers as well, and having come through a period where, especially during construction, where there's a fair bit of uncertainty in that sector, and a period of rising interest rates, that the Dubbo market seems to have held it, or at least potentially even bucked that trend. So that's really positive, the confidence in the development in the city. So,
thank you. Any other comments, councillors? There being none, we'll put that. All those in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. Next item is IPEC 23/12, Draft Development Control Plan, Bindari Estate. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Growth Planner? Councillor Goff, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. Thank you. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, councillors? There being none, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. The next item for consideration is the confidential item that was mentioned before, IPEC 23/12. Can I please have someone move the motion to defer this item to be dealt with in confidential after the conclusion of the Corporate Services Committee? Moved Councillor Etheridge, seconded Councillor Chowdhury, I think. All those in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. As it has been moved to deal with the confidential item after the Corporate Services Committee, I declare the Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee meeting closed, the time being 5:34 p.m.
I now open the April 2023 Culture and Community Committee meeting. Item CCC 23/10, leave of absence. There's no leaves of absence. Can I have a councillor move this item? Councillor Chowdhury, second by Councillor Wright. Any questions or debate? Yeah, all those in favour? Carried. Item CCC 23/11, conflicts of interest. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest to declare? That's a no. Item CCC 23/12, report of the Culture and Tourism Facility Committee meeting on the 12th of December. Can I have someone move the report of the Cultural and Tourism Facility Committee be noted? Councillor Ivey, second by Councillor Etheridge. Any questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/13, report of the Sister City Committee meeting on the 27th of February. Can I have someone move the report of the Sister City Committee? Councillor Chowdhury, second by Councillor Burns. Any questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/14, report of the Reconciliation Action Plan Working Group meeting on the 28th of February. Moved by Councillor Burns, second by Councillor Chowdhury. Any questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/15, report of the Wellington Town Committee meeting on the 6th of March. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor Ivey, second by Councillor Chowdhury. Any questions or debate? Councillor Ivey.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I chaired that committee, and not because I chaired it, of course, but I actually thought it was it's a very positive and very worthwhile committee. We've got a good representative members on the committee. They engage very well. I think we make quite some good, positive and progressive suggestions come out of it. And I think it's, I know the committee really does appreciate the involvement of staff too. We've had good representation of staff at each of the meetings, and I've had feedback after that they do appreciate that opportunity to for the staff to at least listen to a lot of things that are being raised. So I think it's a very positive and very successful committee.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Any other questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/16, the report of the Public Spaces Tree Committee meeting on the 28th of March. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor Black, second by Councillor Wells. Any questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/17, report of the Wiradjuri Tourism Project Committee meeting on the 30th of March. Can I have someone move the report? Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Ivey. Any questions or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/18, the Macquarie Conservatorium of Music Facility Options. Councillor Dickerson.
So I'd like to move recommendation, Madam Chair, not the recommendation there, because the recommendation that's in the papers at the moment obviously doesn't actually resolve anything. So I'd like to move a recommendation that says that Council give permission to the CEO to determine a commercial rent for any council buildings with the Macquarie Conservatorium of Music for a maximum of a 5-year period. And that would be number one. Then number two would be that council can loan up to $500,000 interest-free over a 5-year time frame to the Macquarie Conservatorium to be used for a fit-out for a building for their operations.
Thank you. So are we adopting that recommendation?
No, I'm moving that. You need someone to second that.
Okay.
Just catching that.
I'll second that.
Catching the notes.
This is
Yes, you can.
It's, oh, second.
We're just getting the wording and then we'll get a second.
Oh, sorry.
The council give permission to CEO to enter commercial terms for a council building for a period of up to 5 years. Second, that an interest fee loan for the purpose of a fit out of the building.
And sorry, Mr. CEO, for any building, so it doesn't have to be a council building that we would,
For any building,
for any building.
yep, is offered to the con to be repayable over a 5 year period in equal repayments to the value of $500,000
Maximum value, 500,000.
maximum. No, no, it's any building. It's a council building.
And a second for that recommendation. Councillor Etheridge. Any comments or debate?
Oh, I can speak to the motion first, if
Yes.
that's all right.
Mayor
Thank you.
Dix.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I think the conservatorium is an incredibly important asset in our community. And one of the issues with the conservatorium, as we know, is that they will need to move out of their current premises. They may have till the end of the year. What we have said previously is that we will help them find some way of having somewhere to continue their operations. It may not be a long-term area. And by having that particular ability for the CEO to enter into commercial negotiations for a maximum of 5 years, it means that if they need somewhere for a 3 or 6 month period or a shorter time frame, anything less than 5 years, then the CEO can negotiate those at commercial rates, and that would be by valuation. That gives them that ability to get out of the trouble they might be in now in the short term. We've already looked at their financials. They've got over $1 million in the bank. Their profits for the last 4 years, their EBITDA has been $115,000, $157,000, $156,000 and $31,000. So they've got the ability to pay at a commercial rate. And by giving them a loan of $500,000 interest free, if they do find somewhere more permanent or even less permanent, they've got that ability to use the community's money to actually help fit out that and repay that loan. So there is a small cost to the community there as well. So that way we're helping them get out of trouble in the short term. They might find somewhere long term and that money can be used either way. Once they've got that home, I think they've then got the ability to apply for some more grants, but they've also got that $1 million they could spend on that fit out combined with our $500,000, there's $1.5 million fit out. So it gives them a short-term solution, maybe a medium-term solution, maybe a long-term solution, all of the above, and the community is helping out the conservatorium. And it is an important organisation in our community, not just for the children that are engaged, that are students there, but also the wages. There's $700,000 paid in wages in the last financial year to teachers at the conservatorium. So it's an important economic injector for the community as well. That's all. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or debate? Councillor Ivey.
Perhaps a comment or a thinking aloud. In some earlier discussions, we looked at perhaps offering a somewhat subsidised rent for a council-owned building. If indeed, for whatever reason, the interest-free loan is not attractive to the con because they either don't need it or can get a grant money instead, should we be looking at offering some reduction in that commercial rent value if it's a council property? I don't know where I'm allowed to ask a question.
Is that a question?
Well, I'll turn it into a statement saying, look, I agree with the Mayor's comments completely, but with that one qualification, I just wonder whether we shouldn't, within the motion, have some opportunity to offer a lower than commercial rent for a council building if it's applicable.
You could do your own. Oh, we'll focus on this amendment.
Resolution.
Motion.
Yeah, sorry.
Councillor Chowdhury.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Ivey because the con is very important in our community and they're doing a lot of activity within our community. So I agree, like we should look something also like a subsidized their like a commercial rent. So they have a both option on them. Yeah.
So,
Councillor Ivey.
any other comments or debate on Councillor Dickinson's motion? Councillor Black.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. It's interesting to note that, well, first of all, that other councils, there's a whole list in the report here that give cheap subsidised rent and help out conservatoriums in their cities and towns, including some of our direct Evo City competitors. the con is very important for having a cultural, or making sure that Dubbo isn't really a arts and craft cultural desert, but also making it attractive for people to come to Dubbo if there's something for their kids in the cultural sense. But it's interesting to note that we did agree previously with the old Carpet Court building to give subsidised rent to a solar panel recycling startup that kind of went nowhere, so we didn't earn anything in rent. We still had outgoings on that building in that time, and then we were able to rent it to the Electoral Commission. But I think with a meeting planned with the Board of Management at the con, what comes up in 2 weeks' time may be slightly different to this, but it'll be interesting to talk to them and see where they are on this potential resolution. I personally don't see a problem with giving subsidised rent to something where so many people are involved and so many jobs are created as well. It wouldn't be forever and a day. It would only be for a period of time. That would have to be very clear. And I look forward to the conversations with the con in the coming week or so. And then I wouldn't be surprised if we arrive somewhere different maybe after we talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Just a comment as well. Look, obviously that report does show that there is a precedent around other regional centres that does indicate there's some support for residents of those areas to subsidise the cons in those particular locations, whether it be by way of reduced rent or whether it be by way of premises or even a financial contribution. So there's obviously a precedent set there and a level of comfort around other similar councils to ours. Look, we're talking about a rather substantial investment potentially, and that report indicates a rather large amount of money that the con would need to spend on, for example, the Darling Street premises, which seems, again, in that report to be one of the most suitable locations for the con to move into. And I guess my concern with regards to Councillor Dickinson's motion there would be that 5-year term and to have a rather large or a significant investment into that particular building to be utilised potentially over a 5-year period only, and then have to be we go through the same process again in 5 years for them to look for another property, when my understanding is that this conversation has probably been going on for a number of years now already. The peppercorn rent, probably a little bit like Councillor Chowdhury here, who has mentioned that. Look, however, I'd be also comfortable with a subsidised rent type arrangement rather than a peppercorn rent arrangement. Whilst the entity seems to be trading quite profitably over the last couple of years, there's been some inconsistencies before that, and subsequently, I'm not sure whether the viability of paying a full amount of rent would be viable for them. Look, this meeting is obviously going to provide a steer to a council meeting in 2 weeks, where this group will make a formal decision. And whilst I too look forward to having a conversation with the con and members of the con over the next 2 weeks, I really would like to hear from community as well, because ultimately any form of assistance that this council provides to this particular entity is at the end of the day, it's community money that we're spending here. So I really want to get some sort of level of comfort from the community that they would also be willing to support the con and not just members of the con themselves. So that's my comments.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Mann.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just following on probably from a couple of comments around subsidised rent, peppercorn rent, etc. Through you, Madam Chair, just if you could ask our CEO to clarify the process. If we're to make a decision on less than commercial terms, how does that flow through? My point being that there's these are a very important part of our community, but it's also could be deemed as a special interest group, and how they could lead for other groups that are looking for assistance and subsidised rental, etc. So I'd just like to get the process on the record if we could.
Through you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So only I, as the CEO and staff more broadly, we do not have delegated authority to provide subsidised rent, because it's a form of financial assistance to an organisation. So council, as the elected body, can determine that. You don't have to have a public process. I would note that council in the past, and we'll remember the Greens, did go through an EOI process to have, I guess, an opportunity for others to seek to access a building at, and put forward what they considered was rent that they could afford. So, formally speaking, council can determine what council wants to determine in terms of a leasing amount. So there are the rules of the game, as it were, but there's a track record of going through an EOI process previously with this elected council.
Thank you.
Councillor Chowdhury.
Just through the chair, just checking if we need to add that option in that current motion with mayor, like a subsidized rent, to check the subsidized rent option. Is that possible?
Would we do another motion, like vote on this one,
Or if
and then
You would make an amendment to the proposed motion that would, instead of having a commercial lease, you would give me permission to, I guess, have a lesser value of up to, you could put a terms like, I'm just using a number here, I don't want to tell council what to put, but you could put something like 50% of commercial term, the commercial rental term, commercial rental amount. So that would be the amendment a council would need to move, have it seconded, and go from there. To your question.
all good.
Councillor Chowdhury, is that something you want to consider?
No, all good, because we're gonna have a meeting with Con and
Yeah,
then we can find out.
So going back to Councillor Dickinson's motion, yes, can we read it out so we know where we are?
Sorry, councillors. Pardon me. One, that council gives permission to the chief executive officer to negotiate a commercial lease for council building with the Macquarie Conservatorium for a maximum period of 5 years. Two, that council offer an interest-free loan for the purpose of a fit-out for any building is offered to the Macquarie Conservatorium to be repayable over a 5-year period in equal annual repayments to the maximum loan value of $500,000. It's the current motion before you, councillors.
Councillor Burns.
Are we supposed to stand?
No,
No.
not in committees.
All right. I've got a question. So if we went with Councillor Dickinson's new motion, then we don't meet with the Con?
We're still going to have a meeting with them.
Because I'm undecided because of the conflicting stories I'm getting, and I'd need to talk to them before I could make a decision that they'd like.
Just put it through to CEO.
So our process is the standing committee for these types of matters doesn't have delegated authority. So you would make this motion, if it's so resolved, is a recommendation to the full council meeting, and then you've got 2 weeks by which you could meet and then have flesh out more understanding. So then when council ultimately considers the minutes of this standing committee, you could change that motion.
Thank you.
Any other questions or debate on Councillor Dickinson's amended motion?
Just an alternative.
Alternative motion. No?
It's got a right of reply.
Would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few items that I'd touch on. I know there was some discussion around subsidised rent, but just keep in mind that anything that we would do from a subsidy perspective means we're taking money from the community for things that we could use in other assets, for example, repairing our roads, which is the thing that most people talk to us about. This is also an organisation that receives almost $500,000 from the state government each year, and they have been receiving the ability to have peppercorn rent from the existing building, although they've been paying in the vicinity of $22,000 in repairs and maintenance effectively for that. So they're getting a significant help or handout from a government body, not this particular government body, but a government body already. For us to add to that, I think seems like an unfair impost on the community overall. So at least this way, it gives a commercial rate of return. It's not hitting our bottom line. We've got the maximum amount of money we can have to spend on other parts of the community that we need to spend that money on. And again, we're also offering that assistance by giving them the ability to have a council building and that $500,000 loan. So I think it still satisfies our previous resolutions to help them. We're still giving them a hand, we're still helping them, but we're not disadvantaging the rest of the community from a financial perspective in doing that. Again, I think it'll be interesting to see the discussion we have with the con before our council meeting and see if we need to adjust this, but at least it gives us a starting point to go from there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So all those in favour? All those against? Declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/19, the Dubbo Aquatic Leisure Centres request and proposal. Can I have someone move the recommendation? Councillor Chowdhury, second by Councillor Burns. Any questions or debate? Councillor Black.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a few points on this. I seem to remember previously we had a report at a council meeting last year, and it was saying about some of the problems with putting out the management of the aquatic leisure centres, the pools, to contract managers, and it really wasn't in favour of doing so. So one of the things is we don't know the cost, and this motion would be able to put it out there to find out what the actual cost of running the centres is, as opposed to council running the centres. But from what I can see, and what we were told previously back in June last year, was that the major saving is going to be in staff wages. All the other on-costs seem to be the same, the chemicals, the upkeep and maintenance, etc. But one of the, or two of the big things to do with having a contract management is it still costs to administer that contract, and it would cost even more if there were 3 separate contracts rather than just one contract. But also the costs escalate massively if there is a problem to council, escalate massively if there's problems with those contracts, and they have to be more closely managed by council staff. But one of the major points to come out of the meeting and the report to the meeting was the cost of replacing, or the maintenance often isn't upkept on the pumps and filters and so forth, chlorinators, etc., whatever you've got there, and the cost later on sort of outweighs any savings that you may or may not get from contracting out management of the pool rather than keeping it in-house with local staff. Obviously, it costs more under the Local Government Act to employ people rather than what contractors can employ people for on an hourly rate. But one of the things I do know is that we had, looking at the figures for the last few years, there seems to be a bit of a change in the outgoings and incomings and the general net cost to council. So I noticed that last year's figures seem a fair bit better than this year's figures. I don't know what's changed there, considering it wasn't COVID and a La Nina as such. So based on what we've got here and the report from last year, given what I've just mentioned about the costs of administering the contract and the problem with getting the equipment back and it hasn't been maintained properly, I'm in favour of keeping it in-house. So I'll vote against this to go out and in favour of keeping it in-house. Thank you.
Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would disagree with, I would agree with some of what Councillor Black says, but I'd also disagree with another aspect. I think he mentioned the extra cost, well, one of the only savings being the wages, and that may well be true. But equally important, I think, is the opportunity to give the operator of the pool an incentive to increase the revenue. I think anecdotally, I know that the attendance at the Wellington pool has dropped off because it's not a particularly attractive or pleasant place to go. And I think a good operator who could get in there and actually think about ways of attracting groups to come in and use the pool a bit more, to actually make it a very terrific recreational place, not just to have a swim, but to meet friends and have a barbecue and do various things like that. I think there's enormous opportunity for the use of the pool to be expanded. And I think an external operator who's got an incentive to do that is more likely to achieve it than we will do it if we leave it in-house.
Any other comments or debate? Councillor Wright.
Just a question, thanks, Madam Chair, just with respect to this request for a proposal. So my understanding, just to clarify, we're looking maybe just to go to market and we're talking about a proposal for contract management, so almost gauging expressions of interest for this particular purpose, not making a decision specifically on a particular contract at this point in time. So can I just clarify, we're looking to basically go to market seeking expressions of interest for this contract management of those 3 leisure centres. Is that right?
Throw to the CEO.
Madam, Ms. Bathingthwaite.
Yes, a request for a proposal is expressions of interest. It's a bit faster in the process. They will give us more detail. So in the recommendation for the motion, I guess it's starting to lay out council's want and put what the restrictions are, so we can outline that in the document, so that any person, contractor looking to put a proposal in knows the boundaries, that we're going to set some. When it's not, they can set a fee and charge the community what they want. They can't just reduce opening hours or shorten a season. We will be putting limits on it. So the recommendation is just trying to outline, what council wants to impose on a potential contractor, and that might limit or increase the amount of people that could or will apply.
Any other comments or debate? Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a minor point, and just something that I'm sure is under the idea of the CEO already, but just when that does go out for an expression of interest process, I would just emphasise the fact that I would like to see the documentation as such in a way that the process could have one tenderer for all 3, or 2 or 3 separate tenderers for those, so it doesn't limit us just to one. Now, if the CEO would like something in a recommendation, I'm happy to move an amendment if he thinks he needs that to make sure he can deliver on that. The wording to me says really that it could be either way at the moment. If the CEO is happy with it as is, I'm happy to leave it, or I'm happy to move an amendment if the CEO thinks he needs that to be able to deliver that.
Right?
Yep.
A resolution always guarantees I will follow through. I take it and I will do that, but certainly if you want to comfort in terms of an amendment to make sure that is, sorry? Amendment? Yeah, have to make an amendment by which I would then
Certainly
guarantee I would deliver on it.
Can I move an amendment, please, Madam Chair? The amendment would be under, we could probably put a bullet point, point A under point number 1, that the request for proposal allows an expression of interest, allows a proposal to come forward that is one organisation for all 3 aquatic leisure centres, or 2 or 3 separate organisations, or organisations or separate proposals would be better. Sorry.
Yes, I was sort of thinking you could do about the facilities, so rather than proposals, so it can either be for all 3 or individual aquatic facilities. Might be a tidier amendment.
You mustn't have heard me correctly. I'm sure that's what I said.
So we'll just record this. We're changing it up. No, so up here, underneath here, we'll have that a proposal can be for separate or a multiple of council's aquatic facilities.
So can I just remember what I said then now, please?
Your chair. Through you, Madam Chair. The council calls, number 1, it's under number 1. So the council calls for requests for proposals for the contract management of the Dubbo Aquatic Centres, including Dubbo Aquatic Leisure Centres, Wellington Aquatic Centre and Geary Pool. And there'll be a section of that, A, that proposals could be for a single facility or multiple facilities.
Thank you. Do you want to get a second for that and I'll speak to it?
Second that.
Thank you.
Am I allowed?
Yeah, you're a chair. You might want to ask from someone from the floor.
Councillor Ivey.
If I can speak to that now, Madam Chair. One of the issues is that it might be logical and sensible that a single large organisation might come along and put a proposal in for all 3 pools, and that might be good from a financial perspective. But one of the attractions, and I think Councillor Ivey mentioned it or touched on it before, one of the attractions may well be that individual operators, in particular of the Wellington and the Dubbo pools, may actually run it at a more personalised level. And I'd hate to see those smaller organisations restricted from doing it because they didn't have the capacity to run all 3 pools. So we may end up with, for example, one running Dubbo and then a separate organisation running the Wellington and Geary pools. That may be a solution. It may still be one organisation comes with all three, but it just gives us the flexibility to make a decision that gives the best outcome for the overall community.
Any other questions or debate? Councillor Wells?
Just a question to Councillor Dickinson, or to the CEO, is that if we the tender out there or expression of interest and we only receive an interest for Dubbo and Wellington, then what would happen with the Geary site?
Through Madam Chair, that would be less than ideal. We will probably be talking to these proponents to make them include the Geary pool in one, either Dubbo or Wellington, equidistant. At the moment, we run it by the Wellington team, so we would, you're not going to get it unless you take Geary as well. So we'd probably negotiate. We would bring a report back to council to say that you give me a license to negotiate with the proponent X to ensure that the Geary pool's managed.
Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah.
Councillor Mann?
Just comment then, if to Councillor Dickinson's amendment, perhaps we put that in there that can be the one facility or the other two combined. All three.
Yeah, I've got one or multiple to go for. You might just want to go for two. You might want to go for one, or you might want to go for three. So I've kept it at that high level, Madam Chair. Through Madam Chair, we will be bringing back. So it is a request for proposals. So we don't know what that looks like. So we're being fairly open with them. We bring that to the council. So you're not locked in by a tender, which is more prescriptive in terms of delivery. So we've got some flexibility that you ultimately will decide on when it comes back to the council or a standing committee meeting.
Is that okay? Councillor Black?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. With this one, we could end up with three separate contractors looking after the three separate pools. That would create a lot of work for someone in council to administer all those, or multiple people. And once again, we still have the problem of, imagine if two or three of those all went pear-shaped with the different contractors, then the cost to council, there'd be no saving at all. The cost to council to administer those contracts and get everything back on track would just go through the roof. And that's one of the major warnings from June last year that sticks with me. So that's where I am on that proposal, to possibly have three separate contractors for the three separate pools.
Any other questions or debate? Okay. So are we now voting on the amended?
You need to give the original mover of the original motion the right of reply on the
Remember
amendment.
who that was?
Original member of the amendment was the
No,
member.
no, of the original motion. The original motion. No, I don't get a right of reply.
Chowdhury.
Yeah, Councillor Chowdhury gets a right of reply
Good, thank you.
on the original motion.
Thank you. So now what are we doing?
I'm putting the amendment.
Right.
The
Now we
amendment.
put the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, now the amendment becomes the motion. I put the motion.
All in favour?
All in favour? Against? I declare the motion carried. Thanks, Susan.
We have that.
Item CCC 23/20, the Macquarie River Tracker Riley Walkway Erosion Report. Can I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Black. Any questions or debate?
Yes, Councillor Wells wants to speak to it.
Just briefly, that I've got some concern about the ongoing erosion, which I think all of our community would have. So hopefully that there'll be more planning around how we address that, but this is a separate matter. So thank you.
So a couple of questions I've got, Madam Chair. One of them is in relation to the soil conservation report. Obviously, we know about the report from years ago, and there have been different areas that are indicated as potentially being affected. And what I don't want to see this council do is delay doing something and then have more erosion than we thought. Now, in the report, it talks about the fact that it seems like it's safe enough and that we're not expecting to get significant erosion. I wouldn't mind Mr. McAllister potentially talking a bit more about that, because obviously it can sneak up on you, I suppose, and we've had some erosion there already, and we've blocked off that path there for a start. But I suppose I'd just like to feel a bit more comfort that we're not going to wake up one morning and see that a lot more of that has fallen away, and then we say, why didn't we do something about that? So
Like Wellington.
if I can ask a question of Mr McAllister to give me some more comfort around that.
Put it through to Mr McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. The report identifies that at the present time there's been a bank slump which has created a terrace about at the midpoint. The report identifies that it's believed that this slumping has actually stabilised the potential further erosion, at least in normal or to more medium flows, I guess. The recommendation also identifies that we want to do a lot of planting in that area as well and create a buffer zone to help create more roughness, I guess, to help stabilise the bank as well, and that'll help slow the water in that area. So at the present time, I believe the recommendations that were initially put forward by the Soil Conservation Services and what is in the report is adequate to prevent further erosion in normal flows and also potentially in slightly higher flows. Obviously, the high flows that we've had in recent times, they're more difficult to predict.
So then my follow-up question, I've got a couple of questions, Madam Chair. Sorry, my follow-up question is that if we're satisfied that there's no further erosion that's going to occur there, why do we need to spend $150,000 on moving the path, given the fact that we've just heard that it's incredibly unlikely that that bank will erode further? Then we should just reopen the path and let people use that path again.
I'll throw your question through to the CEO.
It is, I think, and Mr McAllister was quite right. What we've experienced the last couple of years is large flows, which is called significant erosion, and that's still a risk. So we could still lose open space and also the pathway. So what Mr McAllister is proposing is, I guess, future-proofing to a degree, and then we can undertake the planting and what have you to create more resilience. But there's certainly no guarantees there'll be no bank slippage in the future. I might throw to Mr McAllister, Madam Chair, for any further comments.
Through you, Madam Chair. As part of the recommendation and the stabilisation program is the planting of that buffer. That buffer will help create a root zone that will help protect the bank, and by doing that, that will help reduce the risk of further bank erosion. But to do that, we do need to still move the path to the east.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, Madam Chair. And the only two last ones. One, just a minor comment that people have still been using that path because the barriers that we had in place have been moved. Maybe the wind moved them, I'm not sure, but they've been moved from there. So people are using that path, and obviously we wouldn't like to see any potential risk there for our residents or visitors. So I suppose I'd alert the community to say that path still isn't recommended to be used by council, and obviously we'll put some more barriers up and hopefully they'll stay there this time. And the only other question is that with the recommendation for concrete as it goes around on the inside of the trees, and that's obviously expensive, $150,000 or thereabouts, would the same effect at a cheaper price be achieved with bitumen? And we've got bitumen on other parts of our Trucker-Riley cycleway. We've got a mixture of crushed granite and bitumen and concrete. Would it be better to use bitumen there from a cost perspective and still give the better resilience in terms of flood waters?
Just throw that through the CEO.
So the beauty of concrete is post-flood that you have less. So asphalt can still get stripped and it can move quite fast across that part of the world. And so concrete, what our experience is in sort of lower down parts of Trucker-Riley cycleway is you can get in there and hose them off and it's ready to use very quickly, whereas that you don't have that with asphalt. It's better than decomposed granite, but it's still more vulnerable than concrete.
So lastly, will concrete help my park run time?
Yes.
So I might need to declare a conflict of interest here.
No comment. I say for your extra age.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Better on your shoes. Any more discussions or debate? Councillor Mann.
Just a question on in the reported that it refers to a 2018 River Health Report applicable to that reach of the river, and it talked about bank stabilisation the 3 points are there. I just wondered, was there action? What action of those reports, those recommendations, has there been any of that implemented? And if it has been, did it have the desired effect?
I'll just throw that through to Mr. McAllister.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report was taken back through to council at the time. There were no measures put in place. Ultimately, council doesn't own the bed of the river, and that does create an ownership problem. And do we actually install devices in the river, which then can have a flow-on effect down the stream, if you like, which can impact other users? So the short answer was that there was no measures put in place at the time.
Okay, can I follow up? So we don't own the river bank, so whose job would that be to? And is this the same report that talked about the problems down at Wellington? That they forecast that there was going to be bigger issues down there that apparently there was no action taken on at the time as well?
Mr. McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. It is the same report. The report was done by Soil Conservation Services. Again, it did identify a range of solutions or potential solutions that could be implemented to help reduce the potential impacts of erosion on riverbanks. We did seek legal advice, and council owns the land that abuts the river from the median high water mark. Other than, so anything above that we manage. Anything within the river itself is owned by other state agencies.
Councillor Wright.
Sorry,
Sorry.
go for it.
Can I
Sorry.
kick off?
Any more?
So I'd be interested to get some further information on these reports are coming through and flagging these issues and okay, it might be on our ownership, but where do these reports go to that where the action should be taken from? If we can maybe take that on notice of just to explain how that works, because it's history repeating itself in my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
A couple of things. Just following from that, I'd probably suggest that some entities out there would determine that council does own the riverbank, depending on their own convenience at the time. But that's another conversation. Just with regards to that particular report, without major works, this area is likely to keep experiencing band retreat / slumping. There might have been a report several years ago where not much was done, but here we are looking at a report where maybe we're suggesting that we're thinking maybe not much is going to happen because it's that retreat or slumping has slowed, but at a point in time in the future, it's going to continue to increase as per that report. There's some recommendations, and one of them is to realign the pedestrian path, which we're ticking a box with, but the other one's establishing the vegetative buffer 20 to 30 metres from the bank retreat. So my question is, are there funds allocated for that purpose? And maybe what sort of time frame is council expecting to follow through with that particular recommendation on the report?
Mr. McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. The $150,000 that we have allocated for the works, that will also take care of the required plantings.
Just a time frame indicatively?
We've already got quotes. We've already sourced quotes for the works. Once we get the proposal adopted by council, then we can proceed. So I'd suggest that we'd have the works done within 4 to 6 months.
Councillor Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for you to the CEO or whoever. So did the 2018 Soilcon report say that if the works on this area of the riverbank had been done as recommended or suggested, that the current flooding events of the last year or so wouldn't have caused this erosion?
Mr. McAllister.
Mr. McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. The report recommended a number of devices to be placed in the riverbed. There was no funding identified for it. There is probably quite a high likelihood that it may have prevented some of the damage, but these were fairly unprecedented flows. and predicting damage to riverbanks with flooding events is pretty difficult to predict.
Councillor Black.
Thank you. And just a follow-up question to someone. It says on page 55 in our notes there that as the water passes, key observations from Soilcon, as the water passes under the bridge, Tamworth Street footbridge, that refers to, an eddy is formed on the right bank, which has likely caused further erosion immediately downstream of this bridge. So, obviously, anyone who's been down there sees a major funnel. Is there anything that can be done to basically fix the major cause of this bank erosion, which is the eddies being formed by the too narrow Tamworth Street footbridge?
Through to the CEO.
I mean, the ultimate solution, through Madam Chair, would be, redesign the bridge and build it and has a higher clearance from the river. That would be expensive, but a couple of $1 million, but doable, and there'd be some advantages there. And then the other alternative would be to further armouring that bank where that eddy sort of does spin around and undercut that bank.
Last
Councillor Black.
question. Given all that and Council's current financial position, are there any state government or federal government grant funding available that we could possibly pursue other than the $1 million that they were given post-flood?
Through Madam Chair, armouring riverbanks and stuff, pretty hard in my experience. I don't know if Mr McAllister's had any others, but for that type of activity, it's challenging to get grant funding. It's easier to get, for whatever reason, governments have infrastructure funding for cycle bridges. That's easier. But I'll throw to Mr McAllister for the comment.
Through you, Madam Chair. We have been successful in obtaining $300,000 to do bank stabilisation in Wellington, adjacent to Pioneer Park. I think we were extremely fortunate to get that funding, and it doesn't come up very often. And what I'm, even with my discussions with Soil Conservation Services, who are currently being engaged to undertake the design, it's also very, very expensive. So that $300,000 will probably do something along the lines of somewhere between 45 and 65 metres of riverbank. So it is very expensive work.
And I reinforce that's an unusual grant. In my experience, we haven't managed to get those before.
Thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Seen a number of riverbanks supported by a rather large pile of strategically disposed shopping trolleys. I'm not sure if that's an option.
E-scooters.
Good on you, Matt.
Is there any other constructive comments or?
Singer.
If that's the end of this discussion, all those in favour? I declare the motion carried. I don't know where we're up to.
23/21.
Item CCC 23/21, the Wellington Street Tree Master Plan Public Exhibition. Can I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Ivey, second by Councillor Wells. Any questions or debate?
Ask the mover if they want to be answered.
Sorry. Would you like? Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'd perhaps through you to the CEO ask Mr McAllister or an appropriate person if he'd like to comment on the success or otherwise of the public exhibition. It seemed to me that the master plan that's resulted is very good. It's comprehensive and it really does provide a great plan for a way forward. But I'd be just interested to hear some comments on that public exhibition and consultation process. Was it successful and was it produced some good results?
Mr McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. The Wellington Street Tree Master Plan I thought was a really successful public exhibition. We received 14 comments and predominantly they were positive. There were also some really good suggestions seeking clarification in the prioritisation framework. So we've clarified that. And that's really important. So, other people reading it will actually have a better understanding of it, so we may not have been quite clear on how we were providing that information. There was also Wellington School, Percy Street Precinct, where we were asked if we could elevate that area from a planting priority of 6 to a higher level, which when we've looked at it, we've said, yes, we can. We've actually elevated it to a level 1, and that'll provide additional shade and comfort to school kids and the teachers who are looking after them once we do that. So overall, I thought it was a very positive public consultation. There were some comments about why we are picking a canopy cover of 30% by 2050. What we have to understand with that is that there's a lot of mature age trees that are going to sort of fall out of that township over the next, say, 10 to 15 years. While we'll be replanting it, there's still that lag time for those trees to start to actually make a contribution back to the canopy cover. So what we really tried to do is set a realistic canopy cover, and that's also dependent obviously on funding and other issues as well. But it was a very positive public consultation, and I'd like to thank the community for being involved.
Great.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey?
Can I just make perhaps another comment too? It seemed within the master plan, the discussion of the need or the preference for native trees to replace some of the exotic trees introduced. I thought that discussion was handled pretty well in the master plan, and that yes, we all like native trees, and we like to think of them being typically Australian, but Wellington certainly does have a history and really a vista of fantastic established exotic trees, and I think it would be a pity to lose that.
Thank you. Councillor Wright?
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of comments. There was some, likewise, with Councillor Ivey there. I love the fact that the community did get involved in the contribution and of that particular plan. Specifically liked a couple of the comments with respect to some attention to be paid along the entry points to Wellington itself. Certainly, driving into any small community and being welcomed by an avenue of trees, it does make it feel like a very welcome community. A question maybe through you, Madam Chair. On page 65 of that particular report, there was some under resourcing implications. There was a couple of comments made with respect to the cost of trees, which I found quite interesting. Planting in a grass verge, around $600 per tree. We're talking about the Stockholm method, which maybe we can get some more comment on, around $5,500 per tree. Rather significant costs either way, when a member of the community suggested that he could dig a hole and pop a tree in there for a fair bit less than $600, and certainly a lot less than $5,500 a tree. So maybe a bit of clarity on those two methods and why such a high cost.
Yeah, I'll throw that through to Mr. McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. The Stockholm method provides a structural root zone for the trees, and the size of the root vault is determined on the expected mature size of the tree, which we then discount a little bit because it is an urban tree. So, you might actually be digging a hole, say, for a Zelkova, a Japanese elm. It gets to around about 15 to 16 metres with a canopy of around about 8 metres. The tree vault itself is going to be somewhere around about 4 metres by 5 metres by 1.5 metres deep, which is then infilled with rock biochar, which is quite expensive, but has a really high water holding capacity, which then helps drought proof those trees in drier times as well. The other cost with doing work on the road is your traffic control. A lot of this work is done during low flow traffic, so at night. But it's still got to have that traffic control in place for worker and safety issues. So a lot of those costs are associated with that. We also, as part of that, we put that metal grate in so that we actually capture some stormwater, which is sort of a passive way of watering the tree so that we don't have to go around watering. And there's also a concrete collar that sits in as well. So, at the moment, we've got quite a lot of material in stock so that we can sort of kick on as the infrastructure guys get over the hurdle of the potholes, conditions. But once we do that, we can then start to go back into those areas.
Through Madam Chair, I might just add, So it's getting a balance, trying to grow trees in roads. They're very hostile, or the trees win and they damage infrastructure. So the logic of the Stockholm method is to create the root space, an engineered structural soil that allows maximum growth, but protects the surrounding infrastructure as well. So that's another benefit.
Councillor Black.
Oh, thank you. Just a question for you, Madam Chair. It's got on page 65 of our papers about a number of submissions have requested a tree planting budget for Wellington to be established comparable to Dubbo. The draft forward budget as it currently stands, street tree planting priority sites have the following amounts allocated: $92,000 next financial year, and $25,000, $25,000, $25,000. Could I just ask, is that for Wellington or for the whole regional council, those amounts?
Through to the CEO.
So there's a budget line item that actually doesn't define where that gets spent. It's a street tree budget. So I think the planning, from what I understand, is that for that to be a Dubbo at the moment, but that becomes, as we go to a draft budget allocation, that's council's decision to choose. So at the moment, it's just street tree generic budget, but I understand it's largely planned for Dubbo thus far.
Comment. Thank you for that. And just my comment, please. The 30% canopy cover by 2050, it's 27 years away, seems a bit like, will we get there, will we not, with this sort of allocation? When you look at $600 per tree on a grass footpath, that would give you 42 trees per year across the whole local government area. I think that if we want to create a nice shady community for us to live in, not just Dubbo, the whole local government area, we really need to have targets maybe more than 30% in 30 years, and we have to fund the planting of street trees in particular, and we also need to protect what is currently growing, especially the larger trees, which seem to get chopped down all over the place and nothing replaced. And I see street trees around that have been or died or been removed, run over, that don't get replaced in parts of Dubbo. So that's just something for us to think about for later. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey.
They were virtually the same comments that that Councillor Black made, so no, I'm right, thanks.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Any other comments or debate? Okay. All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Review of the public tree removal amenity valuation policy. Can I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Black, second by Councillor Mann. Any questions? Councillor Black, would you like to speak to them?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Only to say that it's good to see an acknowledgement that there is a monetary amenity value on trees, and basically what I said before, we need to ensure that we retain as many of these large mature trees as we can, because we all know that if you plant a tree today, it's not really for you, it's for a future generation. So that's something we can all think about. Thank you.
Any other comments or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/23, Dubbo Regional Council Tree Preservation Order, Public Trees and Significant Tree Register. Can I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Ivey. Councillor Wells, would you like to speak to your motion?
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other comments or debate? Councillor Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just quickly, it's important to note that this will be reviewed and come up again in 12 months' time. I hope that in 12 months' time that we might be able to have a bit of a look at what we can do to make some changes to ensure that basically what I've mentioned about the last three motions, that existing trees, especially larger trees, are retained, because at the moment on private land you can basically just go and chop down whatever you want. Doesn't matter how nice the tree is, with pretty much zero regard to the wider community. Even with a proper tree preservation order, like many other regional councils, barring Tamworth, and many city councils in metropolitan areas have, you can still remove trees. Doesn't mean you can't, but basically if we want to increase the canopy cover and ensure that we retain mature trees, then we're probably going to need to do something different other than this, and we get an opportunity in 12 months' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Any other comments or debate? Councillor Wright.
Just following from a comment that Councillor Mann made a little earlier this afternoon, just explain the process that if a community member did see a particular tree that they found that wasn't on the tree preservation order, what would the process be for them to maybe raise that with council for consideration for future TPOs?
Yeah, Mr. McAllister.
Through you, Madam Chair. Within the document, there's a Appendix B, which actually has a nomination for significant tree registration. If people see a tree that they believe should be on the significant tree registration register, they can complete that. They hand that in. As soon as we receive that, the tree goes on the interim list, which gives it the same level of protection as any other tree on the register. That tree or trees then get assessed, and the determination is made whether or not it goes on there, goes on the register, and if it does, then it's formally protected. And if not, then we go back to the nominator and advise them the reasons why it hasn't been accepted.
Thank you. Any other comments or debate?
Just,
Councillor Mann.
Just in wondering whether that register is available online. Is that public information, the tree register?
Yes.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes it is.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or debate? Okay. All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/24, determination of councillor membership on Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee. May I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Wells, second by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Wells, would you like to speak to your motion?
Just to say, thank you, Madam Chair, just to say that it's been a while to get this up and running. So hopefully we will see something move very soon.
Can I call for nominations for councillor membership?
Put myself.
Yeah. Councillor Chowdhury, Councillor Black and Councillor Wells?
Sorry, point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah, right.
The resolution that you've got here at the moment would need to be completed before then 3 people are nominated, because the resolution says that council will determine 3 councillors. So you'd probably need to do that first and then determine that, or have an amendment moved to that.
I'm doing what I'm told.
You do an amendment now because you've already moved it.
Well,
Already moved and seconded.
yeah, that's right. So it's not just calling, to your point there, Madam Chair, it's not just calling for them now. You either need an amendment there or have that resolution completed and then get the 3 nominations.
What am I up to?
I'm just going to open. Have you got the information?
We haven't determined.
So we've adopted that. So
We've adopted that. Okay.
The 3 names.
So now what? We're doing an
and
amendment?
what you could do is
Well, what my recommendation would be from the floor would be that you would discuss this particular motion in front of us and then get to the point where you've resolved that. And then after that, you would then have another motion that
So we're voting on
nominates the 3. If that's, because this might be changed, Madam Chair. Someone might say, no, we want 5 on there, or we want 2, or that we don't want it, or whatever. So I would recommend you determine this resolution first, and then whatever that ends up with, you would then nominate 3 if that's what it ends up being.
So any more discussions or debate on the determination of councillor membership?
I think point 1 actually says the council determined the 3 councillors. So I think
Let's discuss the councillors that are joining.
The point, Madam Chair, is that this resolution hasn't been determined yet. So it's still floating.
Asking.
So there's no resolution, there's no motion that's been resolved by this committee at this stage. And once we do that, then it would be, to Councillor Mann's point, that you would then say, okay, we've now resolved that we will determine those 3 members.
Madam Chair, or you
Yep.
could amend the motion to have that the 3 councillors to become members of the new Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee, this would be an amendment, are Councillor Wells, Councillor Chowdhury, Councillor Black. And
So you do that as
you
well.
move amendment now and then just a different way of doing it.
That's right. I was only being pedantic, but just to be accurate to
Yep,
the
yep.
resolution.
So we would need an amendment in that regard, Councillor.
I can bring the amendment.
Thank you.
Seconded.
What was the amendment, Councillor Chowdhury? What were you saying?
what he
He's
said.
not saying anything, are you, Councillor Chowdhury?
I don't know where I'm up to.
Chowdhury, need a second.
Yeah, that's right.
Can I have a seconder for Councillor Chowdhury's amendment? Councillor Burns,
Would you like to speak to your motion?
would you like to speak to your
Yep.
motion?
And thank you. I can see this committee is forming. I have a question through you, Chair. when that EOI go to the community, how long will it take time to go?
I'll
Oh,
pass to Ms. Wade.
Ms. Wade?
The EOIs have gone out and we've
Okay.
received those, as it says in the report.
Mhm.
This is just an administrative step to actually determine the 3 councillor representatives as per the terms of reference
Yep.
to be on this committee, and those 3 councillor reps will now, once adopted by council, will review those EOIs,
Mhm.
and then the process can begin of determining the membership and getting the first meeting going.
Thank you.
Any other comments or debate on the amendment? No. Am I right to have a vote?
You say move, don't ignore it.
I put the amendment. All those in favour? Carried.
The amendment becomes
Now the amendment becomes the motion. All those in favour? Thank you. I declare the motion carried. I just kicked him out of the room. Item CCC 23/25, the DRTCC photography policy review. Can I have someone move the recommendation? Councillor Dickinson, second by Councillor Mann. Councillor Dickinson, would you like to comment on your?
It's good to see that common sense has prevailed and we're now moving forward with a policy that seems to work for everyone in a much better way. So well done to our staff for getting to this point where we've got to now.
Yes, I second that. Any other questions or debate? Councillor Wells?
Well, I just want to concur with Councillor Dickinson around the policy. It's good to see that it's come to fruition. It's very common across the NGO sector and other public services. So, yeah, I'm just really pleased that this exists.
Any other comments or debate? All those in favour? Declare the motion carried. Item CCC 23/26, submit partnership agreement between Wellington Aboriginal Action Panel and the Dubbo Regional Council. Can I have someone move the recommendation of the report? Councillor Ivey, second by Councillor Wells. Councillor Ivey, would you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, look, I thoroughly support this motion and the action that that is brought to account. That I think that a formal partnership between the Wellington Aboriginal Action Panel and the DRC can only be good. It's great to engage all community members in the workings of council and to make sure that council is aware of what the requirements of the various parts of our community are. And I can only see that involving the formal Wellington Aboriginal Action Panel can only be produce good results for this council. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or debate? Councillor Burns.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think it's a good move because Wellington sits in a different tribal area than Dubbo, and they make different decisions and do things a bit differently. I think it's a good move. I'll be voting for it. But with it, I do think that maybe we should have 2 Aboriginal liaison officers, 1 for each town. That's all my thoughts.
So I missed it. We should have 2 what?
Aboriginal liaison officers, like instead of 1 handling both towns, 1 handling each town.
Because they're different tribal areas.
But how does that fit within this?
It's just a comment.
It's my comment.
Yeah.
Because the current one is from Wellow. There's a lot of Wellow.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Any other comments or debate? All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. The next item for consideration in the Culture and Community Committee is confidential. Can I have someone move a motion to defer this item to be dealt with in confidential after the conclusion of the Corporate Services Committee? Councillor Etheridge, second by Councillor Wright. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Etheridge?
No, I'm not.
All those in favour? I declare the motion carried. As it has been moved to deal with in confidential item after the Corporate Services Committee, and I declare the Culture and Community Committee meeting closed at the time being, how many times there? 6:45 p.m. Easily.
I now open the April 2023 Corporate Services Committee meeting. The first item, CSC 23/6 leave of absence. We don't have any leave of absence, so we move on to the next item, 23/7 conflicts of interest.
Sorry.
Yes, Councillor Goff.
I'm just declaring a non-procurement less than significant conflict of interest for SC 23/16 as my business is part of the Destination Partnership Program, and I'll stay in the room.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other conflicts of interest to declare? Thank you. Item CSC 23/8, report of the Dubbo Regional Livestock Markets Advisory Committee meeting 13th of December 22. Can I please have someone move the report of that meeting be adopted? Moved by Councillor Etheridge, seconded by Councillor Burns. Any questions? Would you like to speak to that motion, Councillor Etheridge?
No, thank you.
Any questions or debate? Okay, thank you. Put that motion. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Item 23/9, the report of the Dubbo Regional Livestock Markets Advisory Committee on the 14th of March this year. Can I please have someone move that report be adopted? Once again, Councillor Etheridge, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Etheridge, any
No, thank you, Mr.
problem?
Chair.
Any question or debate? Being none, all those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 23/10, report of the Audit Risk and Management Committee meeting 4th of April 2023. Can I have someone please move that report? Thanks, Councillor Ivey. We've got a seconder, Councillor Burns. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to that report?
Yes, please, Mr. Chair. It was a very full on and very important meeting, I thought. I thought there was really some issues there which are of fundamental importance. The committee heard from a consultant who's looking at the risk management within council, and he made the very obvious in some ways but valid point that really this council is a little bit different to other councils because of the complexity of the council businesses. We saw or heard of one today, which I don't think he even mentioned, was the operation of a farm. I didn't actually know that, but we run an airport and sale yards, the Wellington Caves, the Old Dubbo Jail, and as I know, a farm. It really does expose council to a very broad area of risk. And the consultant had prepared a report and presented it to the committee on the change in approach which will be adopted is adopted within this motion by council in its risk management policies. That before, and I don't fully know how it worked, but basically there was a matrix that council used to evaluate risk. It looked at the sort of strategic, the operational and the project amounts of risk, and then looked at the sort of likelihood of any risk event within those three areas, came up with a consequence and a vulnerability to determine the level of risk that does apply. And he was saying that really that's probably not the correct approach to go forward, that we've really got to look at a revised format that involves looking at more, as I understand it, more specific risks. We've got an amount of parent risks, sort of the big global area sits across the council that risks can be divided into. But then within each one of those categories, there are specific events which really have to be looked at. And it really involves, as I understand it, drawing up eventually quite a large matrix or a spreadsheet almost just of risks that council needs to think about and address. one of the things that he did put it, it's in the report too, is that okay, this is a bit of a fundamental approach, change in fundamental approach. You know, really, what's our insurer think about that? And the answer to that is, of course, the insurer paid for him to prepare the report. So they're very much in favour of changing the way in which council does assess risks. And I found that whole discussion and endpoint very interesting. I'd be perhaps just to finish my comments, through you, Mr. Chair, if I've misinterpreted some of Mr. CEO, please sing out. The other, I think that's there. That was really, there were a whole lot of other issues looked at: credit card policy, how we manage risk within that. There was some the related third-party disclosures and the public interest disclosures. They are, again, of fundamental importance to this council in looking at its exposure to risk. And I thought that just the whole discussion and the structure of that committee and the issues which it has to look at and policies that have to be developed are just so fundamentally important. So I think it was terrific. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Any further questions or debate? Being none, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Item 23/11, investment under Section 625 of the Local Government Act. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Graduate Accounting Revenue? Councillor Ivey, seconded Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Ivey, would you like to speak to that report?
No, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Anyone, questions or debates? Debate. No. Being none, I'll put that. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 23/12, quarterly report on compliance on complaint statistics under Council's Code of Conduct. I'll please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Manager Corporate Governance. Councillor Burns, seconded Councillor Black. Councillor Burns, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr.
No. Any questions or debates on there? Okay. That being none, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Item CS 23/13, Risk Management Council Policy. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Emergency and Risk Team Leader? Councillor Chowdhury, seconded Councillor Ivey. Councillor Chowdhury, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm good, thank you.
No. Councillors, any questions or debate on that item? Being none, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 23/14, draft council policy related party disclosure. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the governance team leader? Councillor Black, seconded Councillor Wright. Councillor Black, would you like to speak to that report? No. Any further questions or debate, comments? If not, I'll put that motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Item 23/15, amendment to council policy, public interest disclosures and internal reporting. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report from the governance officer? Councillor Wright, seconded Councillor Burns. Councillor Wright, would you like to speak to that?
Actually, sorry, Mr. Chair, just a question of clarity on that public interest disclosure and internal reporting policy, page number 50. Does show a council resolution date of 7th of December 2020, but then it shows an adoption by council on 7th of December 2023. Is that just a typo? I'm guessing that would be also 7th of December 2020.
Let's answer that.
I would,
Resolution date and adoption by council date would be the same date.
yeah, I would imagine that is a typo. I might have to take that question on notice and double check it, but I'm pretty confident that is a typo.
But not necessarily. No, 23.
Definitely in the future.
Any further comments, questions or debate on this one? If not, I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 23/16, the 23-24 Destination Partnership Program fees and charges. Can I please have someone move the recommendation of the report of the Marketing and Creative Services Team Leader? Councillor Black, seconded Councillor Burns.
Just got a conflict of interest.
Okay, conflict, Councillor.
Say it again.
Sorry.
Just declaring a non-procurement less than significant conflict of interest as my business is part of the Destination Partnership Program.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Black, would you like to speak to the motion?
I hadn't planned on it. No, thank you.
No, thank you. Councillor Ivy?
Can I just ask a question of clarification, I suppose? On page 72 there, it mentions that an estimated 2.56 million visitors to the Dubbo region between September 2019 and December 2020. Is that right? That works out at about 5,000 visitors a day. Is that, how do you, well, it just seems way too high. But
Ms. Coomer. Ms. Coomer.
I'd have to, check that. I imagine it was a report up to December 2022, but I'd have to take that on notice and check because it was in reference to the recent years that the program has achieved. So the team leader was referring to that program in recent years, which would be to December 2022 would be, which would make that right because that would probably include day visitation as well.
yeah, sounds right. 5,000 a day is about 10% of the population every day coming in, so it just didn't seem right. Okay.
Facebook visit.
So,
All kids.
Thanks, Councillor. Any further questions or debate on this item? Being none, I put the item. All those in favour? All those against? Councillor Burns is out of the room. Do we?
Just put his absence.
Absence, yep.
I'll just put he was absent.
Both, yep. Abstained technically.
Thanks, councillors. The next two items have been deferred to be dealt with in confidential session. Under Section 10A of the Local Government Act, items being IPEC 23/12 and CCC 23/27 have been identified as likely to be discussed in a closed session of council. Can I now have someone move us into the confidential session to deal with the confidential items? Councillor Goff, thank you. Seconded Councillor Wright. Councillor Goff, anything further?
No.
No. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. My apologies. We have had no application from members of the public to make their representations regarding whether the meeting should be closed to the public. Do any members of the public, which there are none in the public gallery, regarding the proposal to hear the, that'll do. Okay, so we've got no one to debate that with us. All those in favour again? Those against? Councillor Burns is out of the room again. I declare that carried.
And at
6:59, we close the streaming will now be turned off and any members of the public will be asked to leave the chamber. The chamber will be reopened and the live stream restarted after deliberations on this matter with the resolution to be made public. like to read these?
Yep, we're good to go. Please start the web streaming. That's started. The council returned to open session at 7:45 p.m. Welcome back. I now ask the Manager of Corporate Governance to read the resolutions from the confidential session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item IPEC 23/12, award of the tender for fluoride dosing system at John Gilbert Water Treatment Plant. Recommendation. Council resolve that 1. TWS Evolution be engaged for contract CD 22/5066, new fluoride dosing system at the John Gilbert Water Treatment Plant at the tendered amount of $1,192,101, including GST, subject to the final assessment documentation from New South Wales Public Works and concurrence from Department of Planning and Industry. 2, that all documentation in relation to this matter remain confidential to Council. 3, that all documentation in relation to this matter be signed under the Common Seal of Council. Item CCC 23/27, Destination Dubbo Project Update. Council resolved 1, that the Wiradjuri Tourism Centre is the priority project in the Destination Dubbo projects funded by Infrastructure New South Wales and the events precinct is the secondary priority. 2, that it be noted that the Heritage Plaza outside the Old Dubbo Jail is proceeding given the demolition and earthworks undertaken to date.
Thank you. There are no further items for considerations of the Corporate Services Committee, and I declare the meeting closed, the time being 7:47 p.m. Web streaming has now been completed. Thank you for your attendance.